Now, climate experts do agree that countries cannot take the steps they need to adapt to climatic changes or mitigate the damage that it does unless they have access to lots of the capital needed to do that. A lot more low-cost capital, for example, has to be directed towards areas like investments in solar, wind, geothermal and hydropower generation. But many African countries, which are often the most vulnerable to climate change, despite being among the lowest emitters on the planet, are already struggling to just fund their core priorities like dealing with poverty alleviation and covering the cost of their existing debt. Beryl Oro looks at what can be done to help them.
According to former World Bank chief economist Sir Nicholas Stern, if the world does not act quickly to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, global warming will damage our economies by as much as 35% of the global GDP by the year 2200. This means more loss and damage on Africa's already vulnerable economies if the level of global mitigation and financing staggers.
The key polluters, carbon dioxide being one of them. I think if you look at what has been happening, trend has been shown that the increment is 2.6% per annum. But our efficiencies, the ones that we've created, can only take 1.5 or less. Actually, it's 1.15% that we are able to extract in terms of the efficiencies of carbon per unit of output.
Meaning we're in a chase. And the numbers are growing due to the population boom and the growth of industry. To prevent further environmental decline, financing will be central to the climate campaign.
Under compliance markets, you have regulations. It's fairly working. I think China has its own and some other places have their own. But now we have the newly developing one, which is the voluntary markets, and this is where your offsets now come in.
This has created room for various companies to jump on the climate action campaign, with the goal being to get to net zero. However, there are downsides, particularly in policing companies.
They're not cutting carbon in terms of using their own technologies there. They are relying on carbon offsets. And this is where the fear of the carbon offsets is, because it could be used as a cleaning mechanism for people. Cleaning in the sense, you say that you've come to Kenya, you've agreed to offset your carbon emissions, and then you continue with business as usual.
This is also known as greenwashing. However, there are supervisory bodies like Vera and Gold Standard which are working to check if the credits are credible.
Benefit sharing has never been defined. So we don't know what goes to the community. So this money might come in and then it goes to the treasury of the government and the local communities, because there's no clear benefit agreement. They're just left there.
As governments discuss the most practical and ethical ways to accelerate climate-conscious options, the formation of the Sustainable Markets Initiative and the pledge of $260 million by rich nations, if fulfilled, could boost climate campaigns among developing nations. Beryl Oro, CGTN.